He pretended to be asleep, but what he saw that night changed him forever. In the stillness of a mansion built on wealth and silence, footsteps crept across the floor, hesitant, trembling, almost afraid of their own sound. It wasn't the cleaning lady he expected, it was her daughter, a fragile child with eyes too heavy for her years, clutching a small bundle as though it carried her entire world. He kept his eyes closed, his breath steady, but inside his heart pounded, because something about her presence didn't belong to the ordinary. And then he saw it, not riches, not theft, but a secret so heartbreaking, it shook the very soul of a man who thought himself unshakable. A whispered prayer, a broken plea, and a truth no child should ever have to carry. He had pretended to be asleep, for curiosity, but instead, he awoke to the deepest pain, the darkest secret, and the one sentence that shattered everything he thought he knew about himself. Stay with me, because what this man uncovered that night will haunt you, move you, and leave you questioning how one fragile child's secret could transform a life forever. He lay in the grand silence of his bedroom, the weight of wealth pressing down heavier than the quilt that covered him. To the world, Richard Montgomery was a man who had it all: vast estates, money that multiplied in the dark, and a reputation powerful enough to silence any whisper. Yet, as he lay there pretending to sleep, his heart was anything but at rest. Tonight was different. Tonight, he wasn't just a man in silk sheets. Tonight, he was a witness, hiding in plain sight, waiting to see what truth the shadows would unveil. The rustle of footsteps echoed faintly against the marble floor. They were light, hesitant, almost afraid of their own sound. Richard's eyes, though closed, strained behind his lids, every sense sharpened. He had heard it before: the quiet sweep of a broom, the muted clinking of a bucket. The cleaning lady, Maria, was a familiar presence in his mansion, but it wasn't her Richard was waiting for tonight. It was her daughter. The girl had come with her mother months ago, a thin figure wrapped in silence. She never spoke much, never raised her gaze. Richard had wondered about her, why her eyes carried storms no one else noticed, why her hands trembled when she touched the simplest things. Tonight, for reasons he could not explain, he had chosen to pretend sleep, to watch unseen, to uncover the mystery that gnawed at the edges of his mind. The door creaked open, a pause, then the softest breath, as though someone feared the very air might betray them. The girl slipped inside. Richard could sense her presence before he dared risk a glance through half-lidded eyes. She was there, small and fragile, moving, with a care that spoke of secrets too heavy for her years. In her hands, she carried nothing: not a broom, not a cloth, only a small bundle, wrapped in cloth worn thin. Richard's chest tightened. Why would she come here alone? Why clutch that bundle as if it held her very life? His pulse throbbed in his ears as he stilled every muscle, forcing himself into the rhythm of false sleep. The girl crept closer, her bare feet whispering against the polished floor. She reached the corner of the room, far from the light of the chandelier, and slowly unwrapped the bundle. What Richard saw made his breath falter. Inside were scraps of bread, a bruised apple, and a small wooden carving of a cross. She knelt, her thin shoulders trembling, and placed the items carefully on the floor. Then, pressing her hands together, she whispered words so faint they brushed against the silence like the wings of a moth. "Please, let Mama be safe. Please, don't let him find us. Please, keep us hidden." Richard's heart lurched. He had expected, he didn't even know what a stolen trinket may be, or a childish game played in secret. But this was no game. This was desperation carved into prayer. He listened as the girl's voice broke, her body curling into itself, clutching the wooden cross as if it were the only anchor holding her to this world. "Don't let him hurt her again," she sobbed, almost soundless. "I'll do anything, just don't let him find us." The words pierced deeper than any blade could. Richard's eyes burned, though he dared not move. Who was him? What kind of shadow stalked this child so closely that even in the safety of these walls, she trembled with terror? The girl wiped her tears with the back of her hand, her fragile face marked with the weight of things a child should never know. She glanced toward Richard, her gaze lingering on his still figure. For a breath, he thought she had caught him, but instead, she whispered, "You're lucky. You get to sleep without fear." Richard felt his soul twist. In her voice was no accusation, only sorrow, a sorrow so pure it shattered the marble armor around his heart. He had built his empire on strength, on control, on bending the world to his will. Yet here was a child, in his own house, whose every breath was a fight for survival. The girl pressed the apple to her lips but did not eat. Instead, she broke it into two, placing half back into the cloth and keeping the other half close. "Mama needs it more," she murmured. Her sacrifice, so quiet, so absolute, shook Richard in a way no storm of business or battle ever had. Minutes passed like hours. She prayed again, words spilling in fragments, each one a shard of the hidden truth. Richard's chest ached as he pieced them together. A father who had vanished, a man who hunted them, nights spent hiding, running, never safe, a mother breaking under the weight of secrets, and a daughter who bore it all in silence. The bundle was rewrapped with care, tucked under her arm as though it were treasure. She rose slowly, wiping away every trace of her presence, her small figure blending into the shadows once more. But before she slipped out, she turned back, her gaze fixed on Richard's sleeping form. For the briefest moment, her lips curved, in a ghost of a smile, not of joy, but of longing for protection, for a world where she didn't have to pray to the dark. Then she whispered something so soft, Richard almost thought he had imagined it. "I wish you were my father." The door closed gently, leaving Richard alone in the heavy silence. His chest heaved, his hands trembling beneath the blanket he had clutched so tightly. His heart, so long armored in wealth and pride, now felt as fragile as glass. He had pretended to sleep, to satisfy curiosity, to uncover a simple truth. But what he had seen, what he had felt, was no simple truth. It was a cry from the depths of a child's wounded soul, a cry that had reached into him and shaken the very core of his being. Richard Montgomery, the man untouchable by the world, now lay in the darkness, shaken beyond words. For the first time in years, he did not feel powerful. He felt human, and he knew, as the silence pressed in, that his world would never be the same again. Richard lay frozen beneath the weight of what he had just witnessed. The words still echoed in the hollow of his chest. "I wish you were my father." It was not a request, not even a hope. It was the deepest wound of a child spoken into the night, a truth she thought no one would ever hear. For the first time in decades, Richard felt his eyes sting with tears he could not hold back. The mansion that once felt like his fortress now seemed like a prison. Every wall whispered of his loneliness, every chandelier mocked the emptiness he had tried to fill with wealth. And somewhere within those same walls, a child carried a secret heavy enough to crush even the strongest soul. Richard knew then pretending to sleep had ended his peace forever. The next morning, sunlight crept in timidly, painting golden streaks across his room. Richard rose, his movements stiff, his mind a storm. At breakfast, Maria, the cleaning lady, stood quietly by the door, her eyes lowered as always. Beside her, the girl lingered, her face pale, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Richard studied them both, but neither gave a sign of the night's secret. Yet he saw it now, the shadows beneath Maria's eyes, the way her shoulders bent as though burdened by an invisible weight. He wanted to ask, he wanted to demand the truth. But how could he reveal that he had seen what was never meant for his eyes? Instead, he dismissed them gently, his voice softer than usual. "Thank you, that will be all." When they left, Richard's fork lay untouched. His appetite was gone, replaced by the gnawing ache of a man whose soul had been stirred awake. That evening, as the house grew quiet once more, Richard made his choice. He would not pretend again. He would wait, openly this time, ready to face whatever truth came to him. Yet the girl did not return that night, nor the night after. Days passed in restless silence until, on the fourth evening, he heard it again, the cautious creak of his door, the fragile breath that trembled against the stillness. She entered, clutching the same bundle, but this time, Richard did not close his eyes. He sat up slowly, his voice breaking the silence. "Child," the girl froze, terror flashing in her eyes. The bundle nearly slipped from her arms. She looked like a bird caught in the hunter's snare, ready to flee at the slightest move. Richard lifted a hand, his tone gentle. "Don't be afraid. I've seen you before. I heard your prayers." Her lips parted, but no sound came. Tears pooled in her eyes, and she shook her head violently. "Please," she whispered, "don't tell Mama." Richard's chest constricted. "Why would I tell her? I only want to understand." He rose from the bed, slowly, carefully, as though approaching something sacred. "Who is it you fear? Who is it that hunts you?" Her small body trembled. At last, she whispered, my father." The words cut through the room like a blade. Richard felt his blood run cold. "Your father," she nodded, clutching the wooden cross until her knuckles turned white. He hurts Mama. He says we belong to him. We ran away, but he will never stop. If he finds us here, he'll kill us both." Her voice cracked, breaking into sobs she tried to smother. Richard's fists clenched at his sides. For a moment, the powerful man who had conquered boardrooms and outwitted enemies wanted only one thing: to destroy the monster who had dared to break this fragile soul. He knelt before her, his voice thick with emotion. "Listen to me. No one will hurt you here, not while I live. Do you understand?" The girl blinked at him, confusion and hope warring in her eyes. "But why would you care? You don't even know me." Richard swallowed hard. "Because last night you said you wished I was your father, and I realized I wished the same." The silence that followed was heavier than stone. Then, like the first crack of dawn after a long night, her tears shifted, no longer only sorrow, but something fragile, something like relief. She fell into his arms, clutching him with a desperation that nearly broke him in two. From that night forward, everything changed. Richard, once distant and untouchable, began to watch over Maria and her daughter with quiet ferocity. He insisted Maria work fewer hours, paid her generously, and ensured the girl always had food, clothes, and safety. But more than money, he gave them something rarer: his presence, his protection, his heart. Yet shadows never vanish easily. Weeks later, the threat became real. Late one night, the mansion's gates rattled violently. A man's voice, coarse and furious, bellowed through the dark. "Maria, you can't hide forever. She's mine." The girl screamed, her small body collapsing into Richard's arms. Maria stood frozen, pale as death, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Richard rose, his figure towering, his voice thundering with a power born not of wealth but of love. "You will never touch them again." The man lunged, rage twisted across his face. But Richard was ready. Years of pent-up fire ignited within him, and with the force of a protector, not a tycoon. He drove the intruder out, his every word a vow etched into the night. "They are mine to protect now. If you come near them again, you will face me. You will lose." When it was over, Maria wept silently, collapsing to her knees. The girl clung to Richard, whispering through her sobs, "You saved us." Richard's heart broke and healed in the same moment. He looked down at her, his voice trembling but firm. "No, little one, you saved me. You reminded me what it means to live, to feel, to love." From that day on, the mansion was no longer just his. It became a home. The girl's laughter began to echo in the halls that once only knew silence. Maria's eyes slowly lifted, her shoulders lighter with each passing day. And Richard, the man who had once pretended to sleep, now found himself wide awake for the first time in his life. He had thought pretending to be asleep would give him answers. Instead, it gave him a family. It gave him a reason to rise in the morning with purpose, a reason to fight against the shadows, a reason to believe that even the coldest hearts can be reborn through love. And every night, before she drifted to sleep, the girl would whisper the words that had first shaken his soul. "Good night, Father." Richard would close his eyes, no longer pretending, and let the weight of those words carry him into the peace he had been searching for his whole life. Because sometimes, the most unexpected secrets do not break a man, they save him. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe and join our growing family here on Legacy Ignited. Your likes and shares help us bring more powerful stories to life, stories that deserve to be heard. Follow us for more emotional journeys, and together, let's keep these legacies alive. Thank you for watching. Thank you for feeling, and thank you for keeping the flame of humanity burning with us.